Well, I'm standing between you and alcohol, so this will be a very quick presentation. I'm not going to be presenting in French because I failed in high school in French, and I don't want to butcher your beautiful language. And the same goes for my Mandarin. For those that speak Chinese, my Chinese is a mama hu hu. Yeah, I have some issues with that. But one thing that we are really, the goal of this quick presentation is to allow your mind to go into directions that maybe you haven't thought of before. We're at an unbelievable point in time where industries are colliding with each other with some great, great thoughts. And it's being accelerated at a velocity that some of us actually feel maybe a little uncomfortable with, because the industry that you know is changing and you can't do anything about it. But what you can do is do one of two things. You can either follow the trend and continually chase what that is, or understand that there's going to be certain fundamentals that you're going to have in place, that the trends are going to hit you. And one of those is going to be this idea of hyperreality. Hyperreality is really about taking the combination of different experiences in a different dimension, meaning that you have this idea of virtual reality, which is immersive. You have another one called augmented, which is kind of seeing like through a screen, the reality that's there, and then something that augments that experience. And then Microsoft has a really cool technology that is based upon what's called mixed reality, which is a little bit of both, depending on where you are in time, in space, and the want of experience. So my name's Paul, and I'm a recovering architect. Good morning, Paul. This is a 12-step program. And I actually say that with all the deference to the profession. I'm not a software architect, actually a real one. We've been building buildings for years, except I did my study at IBM when I was in school. So I always looked at technology as part of the built environment. Unfortunately, that's not the way the industry worked up until recently. What we're finding is that the largest industry in the world that is not digitized is the construction industry. But guess what? We have to go there. Why? Because in 2008, when the global recession happened, the entire generation of workers in every country went away. They never entered the industry. So right now, my largest cost as a real estate developer is labor, even in China. This means that we have to rethink how can we use tools that were not even in existence a few years ago, that are readily available today, to be able to do work better, faster, cheaper, with more complex buildings, with decreased timelines. Sounds pretty familiar, almost like an advertising project, right? So now all of a sudden we have this idea of creativity now being challenged, such as, again, those complexities mean, are we putting up more BFBs or big frickin' boxes, or can we actually do something like this gorgeous building? I think there's going to be this wonderful collision that also happens in the world of entertainment and real estate and technology. And this is where we got challenged as a company. We've been working in China, or actually I'm personally been working in China, mainland China, since 1994. I lived in Shanghai for 5 years in a glorious area called the French Concession. Absolutely loved it there. And then I actually met the most wonderful woman in the world, and she's from Wuhan. So I actually have family back in China, although we moved back to the US a few years ago. The reason I'm telling you that is because when we were a small company, it was a lot of fun to be working in that type of environment. Usually small companies, I don't care if you're from France, England, Australia, US, when you enter that Chinese market, it's really difficult to keep the lights on. Right? And it's becoming easier, especially with the relaxation of a lot of different rules and banking rules that have been helped. But the big breakthrough came about when we were heavily involved with creating technologies that would allow the built environment to become better. We hired the guy that created a little tool called Google Earth, who's actually here from Paris, named Remy Arnaud. He's our chief software architect. And what that did was it allowed us to look at information in 3D. Just like what we saw in this last session, it's such a breakthrough when you can have the automative process actually then start to help creativity. But then we also start to take a look at the data piece of this. And this is where people sort of go, oh God, I got to get to those drinks in 5 minutes. But hold on. The data piece of this was so important that we had to understand that data does not reside just inside of Excel spreadsheets and databases where you got to hire very expensive people to do crap that you really think you could do just with a paper and pencil. Well, the big breakthrough came about when we started to do what's called analytics. And this allowed us to take the information that is making up the built environment and put it into a gaming engine. And that was our first exposure to this stuff called AR. Because we can actually then geolocate exactly where our buildings are in a virtual space. And guess what? We then were able to take what those three-dimensional objects were, and I could click on something, and the lights would turn off. Haha. Now things started to click for us. It's the cyber-physical relationship that we're involved with today, that the contextualization of these words, big data and Internet of Things, they all mean crap, unless it's in context of something in reality. And that reality is the built environment. What's hiding in plain sight from everyone in this room is that we take for granted that you're sitting in that seat. But have you ever really taken notice of it, about the cushion that's kind of comfortable? And how then it's in the context of where you're at and how you're looking at me, and then the context of the light right now and how it's coming through. This is what we're calling the ecosystems. So we had this idea of saying, if we can take the ecosystem approach, not taking a look at one building or one project, but start to integrate those through data, we can actually then start to take a look at districts, entire provinces, and cities. Now, all of a sudden, things became really fun because we could start doing analytics, not just of my building, but of the surrounding area. And when I can trust that data that's built on blocks of data that can be chained together, that's the real blockchain. We're looking right now not at the Internet of Things, but the Internet of Buildings, where the buildings that can communicate with each other by trusted information create what's called a smart city. So you may have heard, big technology companies called smart cities and architects saying, well, I got a smart building and everything. It's all crap. What it comes down to is the fluid movement of data through a virtual representation of what's going to affect something in the physical world. So those are really big words, and I usually sell that a lot better to the Chinese because we're talking to an entire nation of engineers. They want to know the pragmatism right away. They love the theory, but how do we actually get to something? And this is our little story. So I was talking with our partner. It is a little group called Huawei. You may have heard of them. Yeah. They're in the real estate business. Wow. The largest ICT company in the world is our exclusive partner worldwide to put up smart cities all around the world. Why? Because they know how to put together a data center and make sure that their gorgeous Mate 10 Pro phone works. I love that phone. You know why? Because I have this big hunk of crap from Apple called the Apple 10. This thing sucks, all right? And I really want to have Huawei come into the US to actually drive competition so we get better phones. But that's another issue that I have. I have many. But one of these things about taking the IT world and integrating them into the real estate is that collision point. So Huawei then had a big problem. They got awarded a smart cities contract to real estate develop a part of Qingdao, China, one of the most gorgeous little cities in China. It's a tourism city. It's based upon seasonal tourism. It's on the east coast, about southeast of Beijing. And it is a fantastic place. It has these gorgeous beaches and these rock outcroppings. It's where, I think 99.9% of all the brides in China to get their photograph shot. And it's always fun because every once in a while, I just love watching these brides go out there because about 15 out on these rocks, right? And every so often, the one unlucky bride gets that splash of water, and it's like, no, But it's gorgeous there, beaches, and they have these gorgeous mountains that are like backdrops to this majesty, very dramatic. But that's all you know about Qingdao, unless you like beer. That's another thing they're really good at. But really, what Qingdao needs is that landmark and iconic thing that actually can be something that is 12 months a year, in a year that they can actually then not have that seasonal flow. So we were brought up to meet with the mayor of Qingdao with Huawei, and what we were talking about was smart cities. This idea of innovations that you can take like ingredients in a kitchen and create a recipe that's very unique for that one part of the city or the entire city itself. And you sort of know when you're losing the Chinese because they become very friendly and they go, oh yeah, I really like it. Meanwhile, that's like the death knell for Westerners who've never been to China before. If your first meeting they love you, the deal's dead. That's China, right? If they're sort of like, I don't know about that and plain hard to get, you're in. Again, China is through the looking scope. Everything you think what it is, it's not. So I kind of went in there and went, and since 1994, they go, oh, you must be an expert. Any Westerner that calls himself an expert in China, run. They're full of crap. Because the more I know, the less I understand. Truth. But that's actually the beauty of how you can start to maneuver, because we're talking about one of the youngest countries on the planet Earth, one of the largest, oldest cultures, but as a country, which is why I cut them a lot of slack. You've got to manage 1.4 billion freaking people, let them mature, and that's what's happening now. So understanding that I was sort of getting the signals that they like me too much, I decided, well, let's start to talk about very specific pieces of these ingredients: autonomous vehicles, different types of energy like kinetic energy, this idea of LED lights that can run through the light spectrum on their street lights, a 10G Wi-Fi network. And all of a sudden I'm going, oh, that's interesting. What's an example of that? And I said, well, in Saudi Arabia, we have a project that's kind of on hold right now, and it was called a virtual reality theme park, where we can actually put a lot of this stuff in there, and the eyes opened up. So we are right now in the middle of a $1.5 billion US development in Qingdao, China, to create a city within a city. And this is our story of a little thing called Dream. What we're doing is actually going into, we're just past the conceptual phase, literally 30 days ago. We're going into master planning and feasibility. This entire project will be completed digitally in the next 13 months, which means that this is the first real estate project in history that will start making massive revenues, because we have to design everything in 3D digitally. So what are we doing with it? Putting it up onto the Huawei cloud. You're going to be able to actually go into our virtual reality theme park virtually and actually enjoy it, learn about it, and learn about the brand. Which means that for brands, we now are starting the process, even before the gates are opened, of getting people's behavior change. We're taking the Netflix model. Netflix was really good at consolidating a lot of the different movies and TV shows that were out there, but they didn't have anything of their own until recently. Now you have House of Cards and all these other, Netflix originals that are outdoing Hollywood. We're looking for that same thing. We don't have Mickey Mouse like Disney does. We don't have the Minions like Universal does. But by combining that together, we now have one consolidated place to actually have what we're calling the virtual reality industrial park. Why? Because the most important thing that China is going to be bringing to the world is that they will be leading the hyper-reality industry. Qingdao will be the Hollywood of this industry. Why? 100 years ago, Hollywood was a place where people went out there, but they would do like silent movies and things like that, and then went to talkies. And the problem was, in order to watch a silent movie and then move into the talkies, you had to change the standards. Studios consolidated power because they set the standards of the width of the film, so that they knew that that width of the film would work on these particular projectors in those theaters all across the world. That's why Hollywood became Hollywood. Now, you fast forward, look at the industry of VR, AR, and MR. We're now at a point where this will be the standardization mechanism for the rest of the world. The good housekeeping seal of approval, right on top. What happens then is that studio effect allows us to break out this idea of being able to have this city within a city. This entire project was announced on November 8th during a trade mission with 29 CEOs from American businesses, and I was one of them. It was kind of cool hanging out with people like the CEO of Goldman Sachs, Lloyd Blankfein, and other people that I only saw like on Bloomberg and stuff like that. And it was kind of cool just to like get to know them as people. But what they were amazed with was they're saying, how does a person of 32 then all of a sudden get a contract like this? And I said, well, it's going to be more about the relationship, number one, which we did have as a small company coming in with Huawei. But more importantly, it's about providing guidance and leadership. The leadership part of this is aspirational. The pragmatism is actually what each one of you can bring to the table. So dream a little, and that's what we did, which is why the name of this project is Dream. By saying that we can actually have this 90 acres be somewhere we can incubate innovation, both software-wise and hardware-wise, so that it can then scale into the rest of Qingdao. And now the rest of the country is looking at us to see how we're going to do this between an American company, a Chinese government, to actually do something good, and potentially for the world, especially when we start talking about standards. Because right now, if you don't understand how the world of virtual reality works, you have to have certain types of hardware in order to view certain types of content. There's nothing that goes cross-content, and the stuff that does, it's really bad. People can say they do it, but it doesn't happen like that. So what we've done is created this entire development around the creation of standards, taking a look at entertainment, the gaming world, shoot 'em up. But more importantly, why don't we expand this out a little bit where VR and AR can really work, such as inside of different industries, specifically the one that we're sitting in here today. What does VR do when the experience is no longer set to a web page, a periodical, or a commercial? What happens when that experience can be part of a lifestyle and you're not just talking about, something that's flimsy? It becomes part of how a person goes through their dimensions. And this is where the exciting part becomes, what do you guys do, especially the creatives, when you have a tool that has unlimited capacity to tell a story? The story can go on and on and on. We're starting to see that in the gaming industry, because it used to be you'd have a hit movie and you'd get games out of it, like Star Wars, and you'd have some sort of game after it. Do you know that the games now are offshooting what these movies are, Transformers and all these other types of things? So everything's shifting. The entertainment world is shifting, and also the use in industry of virtual reality is shifting. So we've created this entire ecosystem. It's going to be something where we're marketing this in a very unique way. Part of it is when you go to this theme park, you have an e-travel area, and that is meant for people in China that would always want to come to France to take a look at the Eiffel Tower. Well, instead of binge watching your TV show, how about really going there? Because when you come into our environment, which you'll see here in a second, everything we do is about multi-sensory experience. It's not just what you're viewing. Plus, we do have access right now to tools that are doing away with the hardware. Imagine having contact lenses that are actually then put into a virtual reality or augmented space. Wow, I mean, the technological velocity is going nuts right now, but it's going to be about content, and it's about control of that environment. So much so that, again, if you want to have your family of 4 go to the Grand Canyon and you can't get your visa, well, you're going to be able to go. This idea of education as entertainment is also another thing that's really, really, coming down on us in a big way. In other words, there's different ways of experiencing things, right? And we have to start thinking that everyone that's coming into our theme park, we have different levels, and such as there's beginner, intermediate, and experienced people. And then right now we have the problem with hardware, with virtual reality, augmented reality, and mixed reality. We can't have those types of people commingling in a single ride. So the entire business model on this, which is really interesting, and I'd love to speak with all of you about this because we need ideas, is that we're taking the business model not just of Netflix for content, but the actual physical place is actually built upon a World Expo. So imagine the Samsung Pavilion, the HTC Pavilion, the Google Pavilion, Microsoft Pavilion, and then what happens is those experiences happen within there that are branded to that particular group. But what we're really excited about is the spaces between the buildings, because those are our stage sets. So you can see some of our conceptual master planning right now. Our iconic image is actually out on the pier, because you are up along the coast, and one thing that is very subtle, but it's hidden in plain sight, all the lighthouses. And no one's ever celebrated that. So we're building one of the largest lighthouses in the world to be the iconic symbol of Qingdao, which then leads itself into this remarkable real estate development project that is not just about building buildings and building a theme park. It's about having the experience to be actually a Hollywood-type center, which is really raising up everything that you heard today about how the Chinese really want to start to be seen as not made in China, but created in China. We're providing that opportunity. This was from 2 weeks ago. That's our site, and we do have waterfront access. These are members of the U.S. Embassy. The reason why this becomes a very important point and why I want to show it is because how we're working in China, and it's taken years to get there, is that we have the people in Beijing, the Ministry of Finance and Commerce, President Xi himself, Premier Li himself, that are looking down and asking questions and asking our Chinese partners once a month, how's it going? Give me a progress report. On the other side, we have the White House, the Department of Commerce, the Department of State that are also looking at this. Why? Because we didn't sign an MOU on November 8th in Beijing. We signed a contract. Along with this one contract, just to fill out the story, is that we signed another $3-point-something billion worth of other smart city projects. But this is the first one that's getting shovels in the ground as soon as possible, which means we're going to be doing this. This is an example from friends of ours back in the States called The Void, but this is how different this particular experience is going to be. You can actually go into our environment, and you're going to go into an environment that's blank. There's no finishes. Why? Because when we put on the virtual reality goggles, look what happens. It's whatever your story wants to be. Now you can choose to be the hero of the story or a participant or actually an observer. So there's different ways of experiencing all of these different tools and journeys. We're also doing it in a way that allows it to be wet and dry, hot and cold. So the multi-sensory piece of this is very, very important. We are one step away from Total Recall meets, Mission Impossible. We're there. And all the technologies are there. Now it's a matter of like an orchestra leader like we do is just to put it all together. The fascinating part about this to me is that this was actually created 4 years ago is what you're taking a look at here. The technologies we have now have leapfrogged, which means that it's going to be a seamless experience. Imagine the branding that can go into these places that goes well beyond the world of what we've known of product placement, right? This is product placement on steroids, meaning that, the drink that you're looking at right here, when I look around the other side through, let's say, an electronic auction up in the cloud, can actually change that Coke bottle to a Pepsi. Sorry, Mr. Coke, I didn't mean that. But maybe the other way around. But we have this entire world now that is fascinating to us. And this is just the rides. When what we're doing here is also giving a place for innovation to happen. One of the inventor's dilemmas is, how do we get into the right time frame to release our product that we've been working on forever? Well, we're giving the environment here to actually have users come in here and see what happens when you actually put a HoloLens on a doctor. What happens when you actually use it for physiotherapy? These are the things that we're finding fascinating. That's a blank slate, and China is going to be leading the way. There's no one else in the world that's actually doing anything even close to this comprehensively. You're starting to see like Universal Studios and our friends over at Disney doing a ride or two, and we're going, hold my beer, watch this. So, we're into a fun space. We're also experimenting with how you project things. This is a very interesting group that we're friends with that put up in London and New York, the Rain Room. These are based on sensors that take sprinklers that put off sheets of rain at periodic rates, where as you're walking, it anticipates where you're going to be walking to and shuts off the sprinklers so that you're always dry. Now, it's a cool experience, but what gets very cool is that in between those sheets of rain, we project laser images that create a 3D holographic waiter. Why? Because all of our restaurants are going to be rain rooms. Why? White noise. When you're sitting there, you're not going to hear anything I say, even though you're at the table next to me. What a cool, different experience, right? Also, when you get up, you're not going to be wet, your food's never going to be wet, and neither will the waiter because the waiter's virtual. So we're experimenting with a lot of these different things. Again, the tactical nature of this is going to make it so that, you really don't know what's virtual and what's physical. And that's an exciting space. What I'm very upset about, though, is the world of Hollywood and gaming that constantly makes the future look like a dystopic, Blade Runner, shoot 'em up, I'm going to die type of thing. I don't know about you, but I don't want a future like that, right? I call Hollywood and the gaming people lazy, dumb. It's easy to think dystopically. Just make it dark and shoot up people. I mean, that's easy. The hard part is thinking of the future in a positive way. And I'm talking about utopian, but let's start like pushing forward what we know and see if we can't just make a better world. One thing that we're doing with autonomous vehicles in this, and this is something that I also need help with, which is how do we actually take brands and move it from being static images like, let's say, in a public transportation vehicle, where our vehicles are going to be autonomous rooms. We're going to be picking up people where their experience starts after they get off the high-speed rail, the bus depot, or the existing airport. And what we're doing is pushing them in, well, not pushing, well, yeah, maybe we will push them, but we'll actually invite them into these autonomous vehicles that will bring them to our park. Those particular vehicles are our ticket booths because we're going to be using apps. So there's no waiting in line to actually get into the theme park. Just go through security and you're in. What we're showing here is what Lockheed Martin did, which was pretty cool. Instead of going on a, in elementary school, going out to a field trip, they actually drive around in a bus. And what happens is on the interior, they actually create experiences. They partnered up with NASA, and what they're looking at is Mars. And when you hit the window, you can learn more about Mars or see a video and actually start, again, entertainment as education. So how do we now rethink what autonomous vehicles are in the space of making sure that we have the point-to-point, which is really what transportation is about for goods, products, and services. But what happens when we can start to rethink in real estate is actually now the automobile, a moving conference room, having your favorite restaurant come to you with the chef and plug into your home because you're too lazy to go out to the restaurant. It takes a whole new meaning to takeout, doesn't it? These are the things that are happening right now in places like Dubai, Singapore, and now in Qingdao. What you're taking a look at here is in Dallas, Texas, where we're taking an entire existing building, but it looks like, because of virtual reality and augmented reality, that it's actually in 3D and we can do different things for it. This was the promotional campaign for opening night for the movie The Tourist with Angelina Jolie and the other crazy guy, Johnny Depp, yeah, crazy guy. So I love him as an actor. But this is how they actually opened it up and had a whole bunch of people across the street going, whoa, what happened to our hotel? Just going to keep this on here for a second because wild things start to happen because it's based upon the movie and how they incorporated that into this experience. In our virtual reality theme park, our buildings will be alive. They will be kinetic because, again, inside the building is blank and you're going to be projecting your reality and your experience into it. When you come out, you're also going to have another reality. In this case, we've successfully gone through the process of opening up an app, and another person opens an app that I don't even know, and I'm actually playing ping pong off of buildings virtually that work really, really well. So again, the challenge is how do you use the face of the existing physical world and start to implement technologies that are coming fast and furious. So this is our little story. We are very hungry and understand that. No, I'm really hungry. No, we're and we're really looking forward to watching these collisions happen, including with the world that you live in. How does that collide with real estate? Because we're being collided right now with technology, the entertainment industry, the automotive industry. We have an entire division in our real estate company, and we actually met with people yesterday here in Paris, and we'll be flying to Milan this weekend to meet with some of the best automotive designers in the world. Why? Because we're now in the automotive industry. I did not learn this crap in school, and you just got to roll with it. And the reason why? We're being pushed by the Chinese to say, we're really good at what we do. But what we want from the outside world is a little bit more of the greatness of what you can do. And together, let's change the world. I love this one image because this is really where things are heading. Being able to escape from all the craziness of the world is now a human need, just right up there with water, food, and shelter. Sometimes you just got to plug it out, right, and just escape. We're providing that escapism in a way in China that they've never experienced before. And it's also leading to what Tom was talking about earlier, this whole idea of the individual breaking away from the community, which is exact opposite of what their culture is all about. I'm learning a lot. Again, I'm learning a lot more than I thought, and I'm forgetting a lot more because I'm getting older. But at the end of the day, China is this great environment for letting dreams happen. And coming from an American mouth, that must be like, what is he talking about? But it's true. Times have changed. And with that, my name's Paul, and I thank you for your time. And Normandy, I think the wine bottles are opening. Is that true?
Thank you.